Silas Thornton's hands wouldn't stop shaking as he lifted the cellar door. The smell hit him first. Blood, rot, fear. Then he saw them. 2 girls, Apache, chained to the wall like animals. The younger one wasn't moving. The older one raised her head slow, her dark eyes burning with something between hatred and hope. She whispered one word in broken English. "Please." Silas had paid 12 cents for this cabin, 12 cents for a fresh start. Now he understood why the whole town had watched him with pity. If you want to follow Silas's journey to the end, subscribe to my channel now. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels together. The auctioneer's voice cracked on the word "sold." Silas Thornton stood alone in the dust, a crumpled deed in his fist. 12 cents. That's what his new life cost. 12 copper pennies for 40 acres of well, a barn and a cabin nobody wanted. Behind him, the crowd of Liberty, Wyoming was already breaking apart. Men in fine wool coats, women clutching their parasols. Ranch owners with silver belt buckles and clean fingernails. Not one of them had raised a hand. "You're either brave or stupid, mister." Silas turned. A boy couldn't be more than 14 stood holding a broom outside the general store. Freckles across his nose, eyes too old for his face. "Might be both," Silas said. The boy laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "That cabin ain't nobody lived there since Mr. Hartwell disappeared. Folks say it's cursed. Say anyone who stays there ends up the same way." "And what way is that?" "Gone." The boy shrugged. "Just gone. Like the land swallowed 'em whole." Silas folded the deed and tucked it inside his coat. "Well, I ain't got much left for the land to take." He walked toward his horse, a gray mare named Dust, her coat patchy and her eyes tired. She was the only thing he'd brought from Texas, besides the clothes on his back and a wedding ring on a chain around his neck. "Mister—" Silas paused. The boy had stepped closer, his voice dropping low. "Whatever you find out there, don't come back to town asking questions. Folks here don't like questions." Before Silas could respond, a heavy hand landed on the boy's shoulder. A thick man with a deputy's star on his chest yanked the kid backward. "Tommy, get back to work." "Yes, sir, Deputy Crane." The deputy's eyes found Silas, cold, measuring. "You the one who bought the Hartwell place?" "I am." "Then I suggest you keep to yourself out there. This town's got enough trouble without strangers stirring things up." He tipped his hat, but there was no courtesy in it. "Safe travels, Mr. Thornton." Silas watched him drag the boy back inside. Through the window, he could see the deputy's hand still gripping Tommy's collar, his mouth moving fast and angry. Something was wrong in this town. Silas mounted Dust and turned her toward the western trail. The ride took 3 hours. The path wound through sparse pines and golden grass, following a creek that got thinner the further he went. By the time the cabin came into view, the sun was already sliding toward the mountains, painting everything in shades of amber and rust. The cabin was smaller than he'd imagined. Weathered gray wood, a sagging porch, windows boarded shut from the inside. The barn leaned slightly to the left, its doors hanging open, like a mouth mid-scream. But it was the gate that made Silas pull his reins. A rope hung from the crossbeam, frayed at the end, cut. Below it, the dirt was stained dark. Silas dismounted slow. His boots crunched on dry grass as he approached. He crouched down, touched his fingers to the stain. It was dry but not old. Days maybe, a week at most. Someone had bled here. He looked up at the rope, the way it was tied the height of the beam. This wasn't for cattle. This wasn't for hanging game. This was for a person. His hand moved to the colt at his hip. He didn't draw it, but he felt better knowing it was there. The cabin door was unlocked. It swung open with a groan that echoed too loud in the silence. Inside, dust covered everything. A table with 2 chairs, a cold iron stove, a bed frame with no mattress, shelves lined with jars of something he couldn't identify in the dim light. Nothing moved, Nothing breathed. But Silas had spent too many years as a deputy to trust silence. He moved through the room, checking corners, looking for anything out of place. That's when he saw it. A rug in the center of the floor. Thick wool faded red. The only clean thing in the whole cabin. Why would someone keep a rug clean in a place like this? He crouched down and grabbed the corner. Pulled. Underneath was a trapdoor. Iron ring, heavy wood. A padlock that looked new despite the rust on everything else. Silas stared at it for a long moment. His heart was beating fast now, and he didn't know why. He'd seen trapdoors before. Root cellars were common. This could be nothing. But that rope at the gate, that bloodstain. He drew his knife and worked the blade into the gap between the padlock and the latch. It took time, but the lock was cheap. It snapped with a sound that made him flinch. He lifted the door. The smell hit him like a fist. Blood. Human waste. Something rotting. Silas covered his nose with his sleeve and leaned in. Stone steps led down into darkness. He couldn't see the bottom. "Hello." Silence. "Anyone down there?" A sound. Faint. Like chains scraping against stone. Silas pulled a match from his pocket and struck it against the doorframe. The small flame threw dancing shadows down the stairs. He descended slow, one step at a time, his other hand on his Colt. The cellar was small, maybe 10 feet square. No windows. The walls were rough stone cold to the touch. And in the corner, chained to iron rings set in the wall, were 2 girls. Silas's match burned down to his fingers. He dropped it cursing and struck another. They were Apache. He could tell by their dress what was left of it. Deerskin torn and filthy. Dark hair matted with blood. The older one, maybe mid-20s, was sitting up against the wall. Her eyes were open, watching him. The younger one, barely more than a child, lay curled on the ground with her head in the older one's lap. She wasn't moving. "Jesus Christ!" The older one flinched at his voice. Her hand moved to cover her sister's ear, protective even now. Silas held up both hands, the match trembling in one, casting wild shadows. "I ain't gonna hurt you. You understand I ain't one of them." She didn't answer, just watched him with those dark eyes. Calculating, waiting. He took a step closer. She pressed back against the wall, pulling her sister with her. "Easy, easy." His voice was rough like gravel, but he tried to make it soft. "I'm gonna get you out of here. Both of you." He crouched down, keeping distance between them. The chains were thick, bolted to the rings with heavy locks. These weren't the cheap kind like on the trapdoor. Someone had planned this. "I need to find the keys, or something to break these." He looked at her. "Do you know where they took them?" Her voice was raw, barely a whisper, but the English was clear. "Who?" She didn't answer. "Who did this to you?" Her eyes moved past him toward the stairs, toward the world above. "Everyone." The word hung in the air like smoke. Silas's jaw tightened. He'd seen cruelty before. Back in Texas, he'd seen what men could do when they thought no one was watching. But this chaining 2 girls in a cellar like animals. "I'll be back. I'm gonna find something to break these chains." He started to rise, but her hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Her grip was weak but desperate. "Don't leave us." "I have to. I can't." "They come at night." Her voice cracked. "Every night. They come and they—" She stopped, swallowed. "Don't leave us in the dark, please." Silas looked at her hand on his wrist, at the raw skin around her chains, at the younger girl who still hadn't moved. He pulled off his coat and laid it over them. Then he lit another match and set it in a crack in the wall where it would burn slow. "What's your name?" She hesitated, like the question was a trap. "I'm Silas, Silas Thornton. I ain't from this town. I ain't part of whatever this is. I bought this land 3 hours ago for 12 cents, and I didn't know a damn thing about what was happening here." He paused. "But I know now, and I ain't leaving you to die in this hole." The match flickered. In its light he saw something shift in her expression. Not trust. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of something. "Winona," she said finally. "My name is Winona. This is my sister Kaya. She's—" Her voice broke. "She's only 15. They took her because of me." Why did they take you?" Winona's hand moved to her sister's hair, stroking it gently. "Because my grandfather is Chief Iron Feather. Because we know what they did. What they're still doing." "What who's doing?" "The judge, the deputy, the men in their fine coats." Her eyes met his, and in them he saw something burning. Rage, pain, a fire that hadn't died despite everything they'd done to her. "This land, all of it. They stole it. Forged the papers. Killed anyone who knew. My father, Mr. Hartwell, others." Hartwell, the man who owned this cabin. He found proof, documents. He was going to expose them. She laughed, but it was hollow. "They hung him from that gate like a warning. Then they came for us." Silas's blood ran cold. The rope, the bloodstains. This cabin wasn't cursed. It was a crime scene. And he'd just walked into the middle of it. "The documents. Where are they?" "Hidden. Hartwell told my father before they killed him, but my father died before he could tell anyone else." She looked down at Kaya. "They think we know. They've been trying to make us talk." "Do you know where they are?" Winona was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "And you haven't told them?" "I'd rather die." The match sputtered and went out. In the darkness, Silas heard Winona's breathing, ragged but steady. Heard the faint wheeze of the younger girl. "How long have you been down here?" 12 days. 12 days. In the dark. In the cold. With no food, no water, no hope. And the whole town knew. The whole town watched him buy this cabin and said nothing. Silas felt something inside him shift. Something he'd buried back in Texas, when he'd walked away from his badge, when he'd decided he was done fighting battles he couldn't win. He stood up. "I'll be back in 10 minutes. I'm gonna find tools in that barn, and I'm gonna cut you loose. Then we're gonna figure out what happens next." "They'll come tonight." Winona's voice followed him up the stairs. "The deputy. Others. They always come after dark." Silas paused at the top, looking back into the blackness. "Then we'd better be ready." The barn held more than he expected. Rusted tools hung on pegs. A forge in the corner, cold but functional. And in a locked cabinet that Silas broke open with a hammer, he found something that made his breath catch. A shotgun. Winchester rifle. 2 boxes of ammunition. Hartwell had been prepared for trouble. He just hadn't been prepared enough. Silas grabbed a heavy chisel and a mallet. He worked fast, his hands steady, despite the growing darkness outside. By the time he got back to the cellar, the last light was fading from the sky. He lit a lantern he'd found in the barn and set it on the top stair. Then he descended, tools in hand. Winona watched him approach. In the lantern light, he could see her face more clearly now. High cheekbones. A strong jaw. A cut above her eyebrow that had scabbed over but never been cleaned. She was tall, taller than most women he'd known, with broad shoulders and long arms. Even starved and beaten, she looked like she could throw a punch that would knock a man cold. "Hold still." He positioned the chisel against the chain's weakest link and swung the mallet. The sound rang out like a bell. Again. Again. The chain broke. Winona pulled her wrist free, rubbing the raw skin. Her eyes never left his face. "Why are you doing this?" Silas moved to her other wrist. "I told you, I ain't part of this." That's not an answer. He swung the mallet. The second chain broke. "Maybe I'm tired of watching bad things happen to people who don't deserve it." He moved to Kaya, working on her chains next. "Maybe I got nothing left to lose. Maybe I'm just too stubborn to walk away. You could leave. Tonight. Ride out and never look back." "I could." But you won't. The last chain broke. Silas sat back, breathing hard. My wife died 3 years ago. Consumption. I watched her fade away for 6 months, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do. He didn't look at Winona. He looked at Kaya, still unconscious, still breathing in short, shallow gasps. I've been running from that feeling ever since. The helplessness, the guilt, telling myself there was nothing I could have done. He stood up, gathering the broken chains. But this I can do something about. Winona was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached down and lifted Kaya in her arms. The girl weighed almost nothing. Skin and bones after 12 days of starvation. She needs water, food, medicine. I know. We'll get her upstairs. Figure out the rest. They climbed out of the cellar together. Silas went first, clearing the way, and Winona followed with Kaya cradled against her chest. Outside, the night had fully fallen. Stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. The air was cold, carrying the smell of pine and distant snow. And on the trail leading to town, a single torch flickered. Then another. Then a dozen more. They're coming. Winona's voice was flat, unsurprised. Silas drew his Colt and watched the lights grow closer. Yeah, they are. He glanced at her, at the girl in her arms, at the cabin behind them, with its secrets and its blood and its ghosts. 12 cents. That's what he'd paid for this life. Now he was about to find out exactly what it was worth. The torches moved closer. 10, maybe 12. The flames bobbed like fireflies in the darkness, spreading out along the tree line. Silas counted the riders. His Colt held 6 rounds. The Winchester in the barn held 15. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Get inside. Winona didn't move. Her arms tightened around Kaya. I won't hide in that cabin again. You ain't hiding. You're protecting your sister. He grabbed her elbow, pulling her toward the door. They don't know I found you yet. That's our only advantage. They'll search. Then we give them nothing to find. He pushed open the cellar door. The smell rose up thick and rotten, but Winona understood. She descended the stairs with Kaya, her jaw set hard. If they take me again. They won't. If they do. Her eyes locked on his. Don't let them take Kaya. Promise me. Silas held her gaze. He thought of Martha wasting away in that bed back in Texas. Thought of all the promises he'd made that he couldn't keep. I promise. He closed the cellar door, dragged the rug back over it, kicked dust across the floor to cover his tracks. Then he stepped out onto the porch, Colt in hand, and waited. The first rider emerged from the trees. Deputy Crane. His badge caught the torchlight, throwing a dull gleam across his chest. Behind him came others. Men Silas didn't recognize, hard faces, rifles across their laps. Mr. Thornton. Crane pulled his horse to a stop at the gate. Settling in already. Just looking around. At night in the dark. Crane smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Strange way to inspect a property. I like the quiet. Crane dismounted. His boots hit the dirt heavy. See, that's interesting. Because we got word there might be some trouble out here. Thought we'd come check on our newest neighbor. That's real considerate. We're a considerate town. Crane stepped closer. His hand rested on his gun belt, casual but ready. Mind if we take a look inside? Got a warrant. Crane laughed. The other men laughed too, but theirs was the laughter of wolves circling prey. Warrant, that's good. He spit in the dirt. This ain't Texas, Mr. Thornton. Out here the law works different. I noticed. Something shifted in Crane's expression, a flicker of doubt. What's that supposed to mean? Silas kept his voice flat. Means I found the rope on your gate. Found the bloodstains too. Seems like the previous owner had some trouble before he disappeared. The men behind Crane exchanged glances. One of them, a thick man with a beard like a bird's nest, edged his horse forward. "Maybe you should come back to town with us. Answer some questions." "Maybe you should get off my property." Silence. The torches crackled. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called out low and mournful. Crane's hand moved toward his pistol. Silas raised his Colt, hammer already cocked, barrel aimed square at Crane's chest. "I've killed 6 men in my life, deputy. Every single one of them reached for their gun first." His voice was steady, cold. "You want to be number 7? Crane froze. The bearded man cursed and started to draw. Silas swung the Colt toward him. "Try it. See how fast you bleed." Nobody moved. The horses shifted, sensing the tension. One of them whinnied, stamping at the dirt. Crane raised both hands slow. "Easy now. We're just talking." "Then talk from the other side of that gate." A long moment passed. Crane's jaw worked, grinding over words he wanted to say but couldn't. Finally, he stepped back. "This ain't over, Thornton." "I know. You got no idea what you've stepped into." "Maybe not, but I know what I stepped out of." Silas lowered the Colt, but didn't holster it. "I was a deputy once, back in Texas. Walked away because I got tired of watching men like you hide behind badges while you did whatever you wanted." Crane's face went red. "You don't know a damn thing about me." "I know you chained 2 girls in a cellar and left them to rot." The words hung in the air. Crane's expression flickered, surprise, then something darker. "So you did find them." Silas's blood went cold. He'd shown his hand, stupid, careless. Crane smiled. It was the smile of a man who'd just won a hand of poker. "Boys, search the cabin." 3 men dismounted. Silas raised his Colt, but Crane was faster. His pistol cleared the holster and pressed against Silas's temple before he could blink. "Drop it!" Silas's finger tightened on the trigger. At this range, he could kill Crane, but the others would cut him down before he could turn. And then Winona, Kaya. They'd have no one. He dropped the Colt. Crane kicked it away. "Smart man." He grabbed Silas by the collar and shoved him toward the cabin. "Now let's see what else you found." The men tore through the cabin. They upended the table, smashed the jars on the shelves, ripped boards from the walls. One of them found the rug. "Hey, there's something under here." Crane's smile widened. "Well, well." They dragged the rug aside, lifted the cellar door. The smell hit them, and one man gagged, stepping back. "Jesus Christ, what died down there?" "Go see." The man descended, torch in hand. Silas watched his heart pounding. If they found Winona, if they found Kaya, everything he'd risked would be for nothing. Seconds passed, then minutes. The man emerged, shaking his head. "Empty. Just blood and chains. Whoever was down there is gone." Crane spun toward Silas. "Where are they? Where's who?" Crane's fist connected with Silas's jaw. Stars exploded across his vision. He staggered, caught himself on the doorframe. "The Apache girls. Where did you take them?" Silas spit blood onto the floor. "Don't know what you're talking about." Another punch. This one to the gut. Silas doubled over, gasping. "I can do this all night, Thornton. Where are they?" "Go to hell." Crane grabbed a fistful of Silas's hair and yanked his head back. "You think you're a hero. You think you can ride into my town and save the day." He leaned close, his breath hot and sour. "Men like you end up in shallow graves. Nobody even remembers their names." "Then add me to the list." Crane stared at him. Something in his eyes shifted. Respect, maybe, or just calculation. "Search the barn." 2 men headed out. Silas heard them kicking through tools, overturning crates. They found the Winchester, the shotgun, the ammunition. "Hartwell's stash," one of them called out. "Still here." Crane's grip tightened on Silas's hair. Hartwell was a problem, just like you're becoming a problem. He released him with a shove. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sell this land back to the county tomorrow morning. The price is $1. Consider it generous. And if I don't, then we'll find those girls, and we'll make you watch what happens to them before we put a bullet in your head. Silas met his gaze. You'll have to find them first. Crane's jaw twitched. For a moment, Silas thought he'd hit him again. Instead, he turned and walked toward the door. Burn the barn. Wait. Crane didn't stop. Consider it motivation. You've got until sunrise to make your decision. The men poured kerosene on the barn walls. Silas lunged forward, but two of them grabbed his arms, holding him back. The match flew through the air. The barn exploded in flames. Silas watched it burn. His tools, his supplies, everything he needed to survive the winter, gone in seconds. Crane mounted his horse and looked down at Silas, the firelight dancing across his face. Sunrise, Thornton. Don't be late. They rode off into the darkness. The sound of hooves faded. The flames roared. And somewhere beneath the cabin floor, two Apache sisters waited in the dark, not knowing if the man who'd freed them was still alive. Silas watched the barn collapse in on itself. Sparks spiraled up into the night sky, mixing with the stars. His jaw throbbed. His ribs ached. His hands shook with rage he couldn't release. But he was alive. He waited until the last torch disappeared over the ridge. Then he ran to the cabin, threw open the cellar door. Winona. No answer. Winona. Movement in the darkness. Then her voice, weak but steady. We heard everything. Silas descended the stairs. The lantern he'd left was guttered out, but his eyes adjusted. He could see her shape against the wall, Kaya still cradled in her lap. They're gone. For now. They burned the barn? I know. They'll come back at sunrise. I know that too. Winona was quiet for a moment. Then she stood, lifting Kaya with her. So what do we do? Silas took a breath. His whole body hurt. His mind raced through options, discarding each one. Running wasn't possible. Kaya couldn't travel. Fighting was suicide. 12 men with rifles against one man with a pistol. We need help. From who? The whole town is with them. Not the whole town. He thought of the boy Tommy, the way the deputy had grabbed him, the warning in his eyes. There are people who know what's happening, people who are scared to speak up. Fear keeps mouths shut. Yeah, but fear can also make people desperate. He helped her up the stairs, taking Kaya's weight when Winona stumbled. Your grandfather, Chief Iron Feather. How far is the reservation? 2 days' ride, maybe 3. Too far. By then, Crane would have killed them both and buried the bodies where no one would find them. What about closer? Any of your people nearby? Winona hesitated. There's a camp, half a day north, hunters from our tribe, but they won't help. Why not? Because my grandfather forbade it. He said getting involved with the white man's corruption would bring war. Our people can't afford war. Not anymore. Silas laid Kaya down on the floor near the cold stove. She stirred slightly, a soft moan escaping her cracked lips. Still alive. Barely. Then we make them change their minds. How? He didn't have an answer. Not yet. The night stretched on. Silas boiled water from the well and forced small sips between Kaya's lips. Winona cleaned her sister's wounds with strips torn from Silas's spare shirt. Neither of them spoke. Words felt useless against the weight of what was coming. Around midnight, Kaya's eyes opened. Winona! Winona grabbed her hand. I'm here. I'm right here. Right. Where are we? Somewhere safe. The men. The cellar. I thought, don't think about that. Not now. Winona smoothed the hair back from her sister's face. We're going to get you home. I promise. Kaya's eyes drifted to Silas. Fear flickered across her face. Who is he? A friend. He's white. I know. Winona glanced at Silas. Something passed between them. An acknowledgement. A fragile thread of trust. But he saved us. Both of us. Kaya studied him for a long moment. Then her eyes closed again, exhaustion pulling her back under. Silas moved to the window, peering through the cracks in the boards. The eastern horizon was starting to lighten. Pink and gold bleeding into the darkness. Sunrise was coming. There's something I need to tell you. Winona's voice made him turn. She was still kneeling beside Kaya, but her eyes were on him now. The documents. The ones Hartwell hid. I know where they are. Silas crossed the room. Where? Not in the cabin. Everyone searched here. Hartwell was smarter than that. She paused. He buried them, in a place only my father knew about. But your father is dead. Yes. But before he died, he told me. Made me memorize the location. Her voice dropped. That's why they took us. That's why they've kept us alive. They need what's in my head. Then why haven't you told them 12 days in that cellar? They must have. They did. Her jaw tightened. Everything you can imagine. Things I won't speak of. But I didn't talk. She looked at Kaya. They started hurting her instead. Thought I'd break. Did you? Almost. Her voice cracked. I was about to tell them everything, just to make it stop. And then you came. The weight of her words settled on Silas's shoulders. He'd thought he was just buying a piece of land. A fresh start. Instead, he'd walked into a war that had been going on long before he arrived. Where are the documents? Winona met his gaze. I'll take you there, but not until Kaya is safe. That's my condition. Understood. And one more thing. She stood, and despite her injuries, despite everything she'd endured, she stood tall. When this is over, I want them to pay. Not just the deputy, not just his men, everyone who knew, everyone who stayed silent. They all have blood on their hands. Silas thought of the boy Tommy, the shopkeeper with the trembling hands, the women who pretended to browse fabric while their eyes followed him. Some of them are victims too, scared people who didn't know how to fight back. Being scared doesn't make you innocent. No, but it makes you human. Winona stared at him. For a moment he thought she'd argue. Instead, she looked away. My father used to say something. He said the white man's greatest weapon isn't guns or numbers. It's the ability to make good people do nothing. Smart man. He was. Her voice softened. I miss him every day. Outside, a horse whinnied. Silas tensed, reaching for his Colt. Then he remembered. Crane's men had taken it. He moved to the window, squinted through the cracks. A single rider approached from the north, not from town, a small figure on a brown horse moving fast. Who is that? Winona was beside him, peering out. I don't know. The rider came closer. Close enough for Silas to make out features. Tommy, the boy from the general store. He dismounted at the gate, looking around like he expected someone to jump out of the shadows. Then he cupped his hands around his mouth. Mr. Thornton, I know you're in there. Silas hesitated. It could be a trap. Crane could have sent the boy ahead to draw him out. But the fear in Tommy's voice sounded real. He opened the cabin door. You shouldn't be here, kid. Tommy ran toward him. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. You have to leave. Right now. They're coming. I know, Sunrise. No, not Sunrise. Now. Tommy grabbed his arm. Deputy Crane went to see Judge Blackwood, told him what happened. The judge was furious, said you'd had your chance. His voice broke. They're bringing everyone, the whole town. They're going to burn this cabin to the ground with you inside. Silas's blood went cold. How much time do we have? An hour, maybe less. He looked back at the cabin, At Winona standing in the doorway. At Kaya lying helpless on the floor. 1 hour. 1 hour to move a dying girl. 1 hour to outrun an entire town. 1 hour to survive. Why are you helping us? Tommy's eyes welled with tears. Because my pa was Samuel Hartwell, and they killed him for trying to do the right thing. The world tilted. Silas grabbed the boy's shoulder to steady himself. Hartwell was your father. My stepfather. He married my ma 3 years ago. Treated me like his own son. Tommy wiped his eyes with his sleeve. When they took him, my ma made me promise to keep quiet. Said they'd kill us too if we talked. So I kept my mouth shut. Watched them auction off his land. Watched you buy it for 12 cents. And you let me walk into this blind. I tried to warn you in the store. Tommy's voice cracked. But Deputy Crane was right there. I couldn't. He stopped. Took a breath. I'm sorry. I should have done more. Silas looked at the boy. 14 years old. Carrying a weight no child should carry. Living with guilt that would eat him alive if he let it. He knew that feeling. He'd lived with it for 3 years. You're here now. That's what matters. I brought something. Tommy reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Pa's journal. He wrote everything down. Names, dates, who paid what to who. It's not the land documents, but it's proof. Silas took the bundle. It was heavier than he expected. Does anyone else know you have this? Just my ma. She's been hiding it since they killed him. Inside the cabin, Winona had heard everything. She stepped out onto the porch, Kaya supported on her shoulder. If we go north to the hunters' camp, they might help us, especially if we have proof. I thought your grandfather forbade it. He did. But my grandfather isn't there. Just hunters. Young men who are tired of watching our people lose everything. Her eyes burned. Show them that journal. Show them the white man's own words condemning himself. They'll fight. Tommy looked between them. I can guide you. I know the back trails, places the posse won't think to look. Silas weighed the options. Stay and die. Run and maybe die. Or run with a plan and a sliver of hope. Not much of a choice. Can your horse carry 2? She's strong. Kaya can ride with me. Winona shook her head. I'm not leaving my sister. You're not leaving her. You're letting someone help. Silas's voice was firm. You can barely stand. If we have to run, you'll slow us down. Let the boy take Kaya. You ride with me on dust. Winona's jaw clenched. Every muscle in her body screamed resistance. Trust me, Silas said quietly. I made you a promise. I intend to keep it. A long moment passed. Then Winona nodded. They moved fast. Tommy lifted Kaya onto his horse, settling her in front of him, where he could hold her steady. Winona mounted Dust behind Silas, her arms wrapping around his waist. The North Trail, Tommy said. Follow me. They rode into the darkness. Behind them, the first light of dawn crept over the mountains, and from the direction of town, the sound of hoofbeats began to rise. The horses pushed hard through the darkness. Silas could feel Winona's grip tightening around his waist every time Dust stumbled on loose rock. Her breathing was ragged against his back. She was weaker than she let on. How far? Silas called to Tommy. Another hour, maybe more. Behind them, the hoofbeats grew louder. Silas counted at least 20 riders, maybe 30. The whole damn town, just like Tommy said. They're gaining. I know a place. Tommy veered his horse sharply to the left. A ravine, narrow. They'll have to go single file. And if they catch us in there, then we're dead anyway. Silas didn't argue. He followed. The trail dropped steeply. Dust slid on loose shale, nearly throwing them both. Winona's arms locked tighter. Silas felt her forehead press against his shoulder blade. Hot. Too hot. You're burning up. I'm fine. You're lying. Keep riding. The ravine walls rose on either side. Moonlight barely reached the bottom. Tommy's horse picked its way through the rocks. Kaya slumped forward against his chest. "She's still breathing?" Silas asked. Tommy pressed his hand to her back. "Yeah, barely." They pushed deeper. The sound of pursuit faded, slightly muffled by the stone walls. But it didn't disappear. "They'll figure it out," Winona said. "Crane knows these lands. He'll find another way around." "Then we'd better move faster." The ravine opened suddenly into a wide meadow. Tommy pulled his horse to a stop, pointing north. "See that ridge? Other side is Arapaho territory. The hunting camp is maybe 2 miles past. Will they help us?" "Don't know." Tommy looked at Winona. "Depends on her." Silas turned in the saddle. Winona's face was pale, slicked with sweat. Her eyes were half closed. "Hey, stay with me. I'm here. We're almost there. Just hold on." She nodded weakly. Her grip loosened. Silas kicked Dust forward. They crossed the meadow at full gallop, the tall grass whipping against their legs. The ridge loomed ahead, dark against the lightening sky. Almost there. A rifle shot cracked through the air. Dust screamed and stumbled. Silas felt the horse's front legs buckle. He grabbed Winona and threw them both clear as Dust went down hard, rolling in the grass. "No!" He crawled to the horse. Blood pumped from a wound in her chest. Her eyes rolled wild with pain. "Easy, girl. Easy." Another shot. This one kicked up dirt inches from his head. "Silas!" Tommy had circled back. "We have to go." Dust's breathing slowed. Her head dropped to the ground. One final shudder, and she was still. Silas pressed his hand to her neck. Nothing. "Damn it!" He turned. Winona was trying to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold. He ran to her, pulled her up. "Can you walk?" "I'll crawl if I have to." Another shot. Closer this time. Silas could see the riders now pouring out of the ravine like water through a crack. "Get on with Tommy." "There's no room." "Then make room." He lifted her bodily and threw her onto Tommy's horse behind Kaya. "Go. Get to the camp. I'll hold them off." "With what? You don't even have a gun." Silas pulled the knife from his boot. "I've got this." "That's suicide." "Maybe." He slapped the horse's flank. "Go!" Tommy didn't hesitate. He kicked his heels and the horse bolted toward the ridge. Silas turned to face the riders. 12 men broke from the pack, galloping toward him. Crane was in the lead, his face twisted with rage. "Thornton, you're a dead man." Silas stood his ground. The knife felt small in his hand, useless against rifles and horses, but he'd made a promise. Crane raised his pistol. An arrow whistled through the air and buried itself in his shoulder. Crane screamed and pitched sideways. His horse reared, throwing him to the ground. More arrows came, from the ridge, from the trees. The riders scattered, firing wildly into the shadows. Silas hit the dirt as chaos erupted around him. A figure appeared beside him. Young, Apache, face painted with black and white stripes. "You the one who freed them?" Silas nodded. "Then you come with us. Now." Strong hands hauled him up. He was half dragged, half carried toward the ridge as arrows continued to rain down on the posse. Behind him, he heard Crane screaming orders. Fall back, damn it!" The riders retreated. Silas watched them go, barely believing what he was seeing. They'd made it. The hunting camp was smaller than Silas expected. A dozen hide tents arranged in a loose circle. Horses tied to a rope line. A fire burning low in the center. Tommy was already there, helping lower Kaya from the horse. 3 women rushed forward, speaking rapidly in Arapaho. Winona slid off the horse and collapsed. "Winona." Silas pushed through the crowd and knelt beside her. Her eyes were closed. Her skin was gray. "She needs help." An older woman, gray streaks in her black hair, crouched beside him. She pressed her hand to Winona's forehead and hissed through her teeth. "Fever. The wounds have poisoned her blood." She looked at the men who'd rescued them. Bring her inside, quickly." They lifted Winona and carried her toward one of the tents. Silas tried to follow, but a hand stopped him. The young warrior who'd saved him. His face was hard. "You don't go in there. She needs her people, not you." The warrior's eyes were cold. "You've done enough." Silas wanted to argue, but the exhaustion hit him all at once. His legs buckled. He caught himself on a tent pole. "Easy, white man." The warrior's grip shifted from hostile to steadying. "You're no good to anyone dead." They brought him to another tent, gave him water, food, a blanket. He tried to stay awake to keep watch, but his body betrayed him. He slept. When he woke, the sun was high. His body ached in places he didn't know existed. Tommy sat cross-legged beside him, Hartwell's journal open in his lap. "How long was I out?" "Most of the day. You needed it." Silas sat up slowly. "Winona." "Still fighting. The healer says the next few hours will tell." "And Kaya?" "Better, stronger than she looks." Tommy closed the journal. "They've been reading this, the hunters, translating parts for each other. And they're angry." Tommy met his gaze. "Real angry. My pa documented everything, every bribe, every murder, every piece of land they stole." He paused, "Including what they did to Winona's father." Silas took the journal. The handwriting was neat, precise, dates and names in careful columns. Samuel Hartwell had known exactly what he was doing when he wrote this. "This is enough to hang Crane. Blackwood, too. If it ever reaches the right people." "That's a big if." A shadow fell across the tent opening. The young warrior stepped inside. His face had softened slightly. "She's awake. She's asking for you." Silas scrambled to his feet. The warrior led him across the camp to Winona's tent. He paused at the entrance. "She's weak. Don't tire her." Silas ducked inside. Winona lay on a pile of furs, her skin still pale but her eyes open. Alert. The fever had broken, but she looked like she'd aged 10 years in a night. "You came back." "Told you I would." "Thought I dreamed it." She tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "The arrows, the rescue, felt like something from my grandfather's stories." Silas sat beside her. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been trampled by a buffalo." She shifted, wincing. "But alive, thanks to you." "Thanks to them. I was about to get my head blown off. You stayed, bought us time." Her hand reached out, found his. "No one's ever done that for me before." Her fingers were cool against his palm, thin, fragile, but her grip was strong. "Kaya. She's better. The women have been with her all night." Winona's voice cracked. "They saved her, Silas. They saved us both." "Then your people came through after all." "Not my people. Not really." She looked away. "These hunters. They left the reservation because they couldn't stand watching anymore. Watching our land shrink. Watching our children go hungry while white men grew fat on stolen ground." She paused. "My grandfather calls them troublemakers. But they're the only ones who still have fire in their hearts. Sometimes troublemakers are exactly what you need." She laughed. It was weak but real. "You sound like my father." Silas didn't know what to say to that. He sat in silence, holding her hand. "The journal," Winona said finally. "Tommy's father's journal. I heard them talking. Is it real?" "Real as it gets. Names, dates, everything." "But not the land documents." "No. Those are still wherever Hartwell hid them." Winona's grip tightened. "I know where they are." "You said that before." "I know, but I couldn't tell you. Not until I was sure." She turned her head, meeting his eyes. "My father died protecting that secret. I wasn't going to give it up to a stranger. And now you're not a stranger." She held his gaze. "You're the man who went back for us when any sane person would have run." Silas felt something shift in his chest. a warmth he hadn't felt since Martha died. Where are they? There's a place, sacred to my people, a cave at the base of Thunder Rock about 4 hours east of here. Hartwell knew about it because my father showed him, trusted him like a brother. Her voice hardened. They killed that trust, used it to find my father, to torture him. But they never found the documents. No, because my father lied, told them they were in the cabin, gave them a false location so they'd stop hurting him. She closed her eyes. He died with the truth still in his head, but he told me first, made me swear to protect it. And you have. For 16 years. A tear slid down her cheek. I was 12 years old, Silas. 12, and I watched them kill my father because he wouldn't betray his friend. Silas's hand moved without thinking. He brushed the tear away, his rough thumb gentle against her skin. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be angry. Her eyes opened, and in them was that fire again. Help me finish what they started. Help me destroy the men who did this. I will. Promise me. I promise. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. The cave. We need to go tonight, before Crane figures out where we are. You can barely walk. Then carry me. Winona. I've waited 16 years. Her voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I'm not waiting another day. The tent flap opened. The young warrior stepped inside. His expression had changed. No longer hostile. Something closer to respect. The council wants to speak with you. Both of you. Council, Silas asked. The hunters. They've decided something. He paused. Something that changes everything. They gathered around the central fire. 8 warriors. Tommy, the older woman who treated Winona, and Winona herself supported between Silas and the young warrior whose name Silas had learned was Running Elk. The eldest hunter, a man with deep scars across his cheek, spoke first. His English was broken but clear. We have read the journal. We have heard the story. We know what was done. He looked at Silas. You are not our enemy, but you are not our friend. You are white. Your people took everything from us. Silas didn't flinch. I know. Then why do you help us? Because what they did is wrong. Doesn't matter what color anyone's skin is. Wrong is wrong. The scarred hunter studied him. Many white men say such things. Few mean them. I'm not most white men. We will see. The hunter turned to Winona. You are Chief Iron Feather's granddaughter. Your blood is strong. Your father was a great man. He was. He would want you to rest, to heal, to let others carry this burden. Winona straightened despite the pain. My father would want me to finish what he started, even if it kills you. Especially then. Silence fell over the camp. The fire crackled. The wind whispered through the trees. Finally, the scarred hunter nodded. Then we will help you. He raised his hand. But not for the white man's justice, not for their courts or their laws. We will help because your father's blood demands it, because our ancestors cry out for what was taken. The other warriors murmured in agreement. Tonight we ride to Thunder Rock. We retrieve the documents, and then... He paused. Then we decide what comes next. What about Crane? Silas asked. He's not going to sit back and wait. Let him come. Running Elk's hand moved to the knife at his belt. We've been waiting for a fight. Now we have one. The scarred hunter stood. Rest while you can. When the moon rises, we ride. The camp burst into activity. Warriors checking weapons, women packing supplies. Tommy sat with Kaya speaking softly while she ate the first real meal she'd had in weeks. Silas found a quiet spot near the edge of camp. He needed to think, to plan. You're worried. He turned. Winona had followed him, moving slowly but steadily. You should be resting. I'll rest when I'm dead. She sat beside him close enough that their shoulders touched. "What's on your mind?" "This whole thing. It's bigger than I thought." He ran a hand through his hair. "Crane Blackwood, the forged documents. This isn't just about your family's land. It's about thousands of acres, millions of dollars." "I know. Men have killed for less. They'll kill for this." "They already have." Silas looked at her. "Aren't you scared?" Winona was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "When I was in that cellar chained to the wall listening to Kaya scream, I made a deal with whatever spirits would listen. I said, give me one chance. One chance to make them pay. And I'll never ask for anything again. And now you have it. Now I have it." She turned to face him. "I'm not scared, Silas. I'm ready." He wanted to argue, to tell her this was suicide, that they were outnumbered, outgunned, facing an enemy with money and power and the law on their side. But he looked into her eyes and saw something he recognized, the same thing he'd seen in his own reflection the day he'd walked away from his badge. The certainty of someone with nothing left to lose. "Then I'm ready too." She reached out and took his hand again. This time she didn't let go. "Silas." "Yeah. When this is over. If we survive." She hesitated. "What will you do?" "I don't know. Never thought much past tomorrow." "That's a sad way to live." "It's kept me alive. Surviving isn't living." She squeezed his hand. "My father used to say that. Said too many people walk through life like ghosts. Going through the motions. Afraid to feel anything because feeling hurts." "Your father was a wise man." "He was. And he was wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "He trusted the wrong people. Believed that if he just showed them the truth, they'd do the right thing." Her voice hardened. "But some people don't want truth. They want power. And they'll burn the whole world to keep it." Silas thought about that. About the men he'd served with in Texas. The ones who'd looked the other way when the cattle baron's son killed that farmer. The ones who'd told him to keep quiet, to go along. He'd been one of them once, a ghost going through the motions. "Maybe that's why we're here," he said slowly. "You and me. Maybe we're the ones who won't look away." "Is that enough?" "I don't know, but it's a start." The sun was setting, orange and red bleeding across the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Running elk appeared at the edge of camp. "It's time." Silas stood and pulled Winona to her feet. "You sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything." They walked back to the fire together. The warriors were mounted. Tommy held the reins of a horse for Silas. Another waited for Winona. "Thunder Rock is 4 hours east," Running Elk said. "We ride hard, no stopping." Silas mounted. Winona did the same, gripping the saddle horn to steady herself. "What about Kaya?" Winona asked. "She stays here, with the women. She'll be safe." Kaya appeared at her sister's side. Her face was still gaunt, but her eyes were clear. "Come back to me." Winona leaned down and pressed her forehead to her sister's. "I will. I swear it. And bring him back too." Kaya's eyes flicked to Silas. "He's a good one." Despite everything, Silas felt his face flush. "Time to go." Running Elk kicked his horse forward. The hunting party rode out into the gathering darkness. 8 warriors. 1 rancher. 1 woman with a secret worth dying for. Behind them, the camp fell silent. Ahead of them, Thunder Rock waited. And somewhere in between, Deputy Crane and his men were already moving. Hunting. Closing the trap. The final game had begun. Thunder Rock rose from the earth like a fist punched toward heaven. The riding party slowed as they approached horses breathing hard from the 4-hour push through darkness. Running Elk raised his hand. Everyone stopped. "Something's wrong." Silas scanned the shadows. He couldn't see anything, couldn't hear anything, but his gut twisted with the same warning. What is it? Too quiet. No night birds. No insects. Running Elk's hand moved to his bow. We're not alone. Winona pulled her horse beside Silas. Her face was pale from exhaustion, but her eyes were sharp. The cave entrance is just past that ridge. We're close. Close enough to walk into a trap. How would they know no one knows about this place except... She stopped. Her face changed. Except who? Silas demanded. Except my grandfather. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And the men he trusted. Running Elk cursed in Arapaho. Your grandfather would never betray his own blood. No. But what about the men around him, the ones who've been whispering in his ear for years? Silas's mind raced. Who would have known? Winona's hands gripped the reins so tight, her knuckles went white. Grey Wolf. My grandfather's advisor. He was there when my father told us about the cave. He was always there. You think he's working with Crane? I think someone's been feeding them information for years. How else did they find my father? How did they know when to take me and Kaya? Her voice cracked. I trusted him. We all did. A rifle shot shattered the night. One of the warriors pitched backward off his horse dead before he hit the ground. Ambush! More shots. Muzzle flashes erupted from the rocks above. The horses screamed and scattered. Silas grabbed Winona's reins and pulled her behind a boulder as bullets kicked up dirt around them. How many? He shouted. Running Elk had taken cover nearby, bow already in hand. 20, maybe more. They've got the high ground. Can we go back? Look. Silas turned. Behind them, torches appeared. Riders blocking the trail they'd come from. They were surrounded. Thornton. Crane's voice echoed off the rocks. Silas peered around the boulder. The deputy stood on a ledge above, rifle in hand, grinning down at them. Thought you could run? Thought your redskin friends could save you? Silas didn't answer. He was counting positions. 8 men above, at least a dozen behind. They were outnumbered 3-1. I know why you're here, Crane continued. The cave, the documents. You think you're clever, but we've known about this place for years. We just needed someone to lead us to it. Winona's face went pale. He used us. He let us escape so we'd lead them right here. Give up now, Crane called. Hand over the woman and the papers, and maybe I'll let the rest of you crawl back to your reservation. Running Elk notched an arrow. I'll die before I surrender to you. That can be arranged. A volley of shots tore through the night. 2 more warriors fell. The others returned fire with arrows and the few rifles they had, but they were fighting blind against an entrenched enemy. We can't stay here, Silas said. We need to move. Move where they're everywhere. Winona grabbed his arm. The cave. It's our only chance. They'll follow us in. No, there's another way out. My father showed me. A passage that leads to the river on the other side of the mountain. Her eyes burned into his. We get the documents and we run. It's the only way any of this means anything. Silas looked at Running Elk. The warrior's jaw was tight, but he nodded. Go. We'll cover you. You'll die. Maybe. But my brothers didn't ride all this way to run. Running Elk grabbed Silas's shoulder. Get her out. Get those papers to someone who can use them. Make our deaths mean something. There was no time to argue. No time for goodbyes. Let's go. Silas grabbed Winona's hand and they ran. Bullets whined past them. Arrows answered from behind. The sounds of battle faded as they scrambled up the rocky slope toward the cave entrance. Winona stumbled. Silas caught her, half carrying her the last 20 feet. There, behind those rocks. A narrow gap in the stone, barely wide enough for one person to squeeze through. Silas pushed Winona in first, then followed. The darkness swallowed them whole. Inside, the air was cold, damp, Silas could hear water dripping somewhere deep in the mountain. "Can you see anything?" "No, but I know the way." Winona's hand found his in the darkness. "Stay close." They moved slowly, feeling their way along the stone walls. The passage twisted and turned sometimes, so narrow Silas had to turn sideways to fit through. "How much further?" "Not far. There's a chamber up ahead. That's where my father hid them." The passage opened suddenly into a wider space. Silas couldn't see anything, but he could feel the difference. The air moved differently. Sound echoed. "We need light." "There should be torches. My father kept supplies here." Winona moved away from him, her footsteps echoing. Then a scraping sound, a spark. Light flared. Silas blinked against the sudden brightness. Winona stood holding a burning torch, her face illuminated by the flickering flame. The chamber was small, maybe 15 feet across. The walls were covered with ancient paintings. Horses, buffalo, figures dancing around fires, and in the center, a stone cairn. Winona approached it slowly. Her hands trembled as she removed the stones one by one. Inside was a leather satchel, old, cracked, but intact. She opened it and pulled out a stack of papers. Even in the torchlight, Silas could see the official seals, the signatures. "This is it," Winona breathed. "Everything. Land deeds, letters, confessions." She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. 16 years, Silas. 16 years I've carried this secret. And now? Now we finish it. A sound echoed from the passage behind them. Footsteps, getting closer. "They found us." Silas looked around. "Where's the other way out?" Winona pointed to a narrow crack in the far wall. "Through there. It's tight, but it leads to the river. Go. I'll hold them off." "With what? You don't have a weapon." She was right. He'd lost the knife somewhere in the chaos outside. He had nothing but his fists and his fury. "Doesn't matter. Go." Winona didn't move. Instead, she pulled something from her belt, a pistol. One of the warriors must have given it to her. "Take it. You need it more than I do. I need you alive more than I need a gun." She pressed it into his hands. "Don't you dare die, Silas Thornton. You promised me." He looked at her, at this woman who'd survived hell, who'd carried a secret that had destroyed her family, who'd trusted him when she had every reason not to. "I keep my promises." He kissed her. It was sudden, desperate. Her lips tasted like dust and salt, and something sweeter underneath. Her hand grabbed the back of his neck and pulled him closer. Then she pushed him away. "Now hold them off." She disappeared through the crack in the wall, the satchel clutched to her chest. Silas turned to face the passage. The footsteps were louder now. He could see torchlight flickering on the walls. 5 rounds in the pistol, maybe 6 men coming. Bad odds. But he'd faced worse. The first man emerged from the passage. Silas shot him in the chest. The second came right behind. Another shot, another body. The third man was smarter. He hung back using the passage wall for cover. "Give it up, Thornton. You're trapped." Silas recognized the voice. "Deputy Crane." "How'd you find us?" "Grey Wolf's been on our payroll for years. Told us about the cave the moment Winona's father mentioned it." Crane laughed. "Funny thing about secrets. Someone always talks." "Where is he, Grey Wolf?" "Dead. Outlived his usefulness." A pause. "Just like you." Silas pressed against the wall, trying to make himself a smaller target. 3 rounds left. "You can't win this, Crane. Even if you kill me, Winona's already gone. She's got the documents." "She won't get far. My men are covering the river exit." Silas's blood went cold. "That's right." Crane's voice dripped with satisfaction. "We've known about every escape route for years. Why do you think we let her run? Why do you think we let you rescue her in the first place?" The realization hit Silas like a punch to the gut. It had all been a setup. From the moment he'd bought the cabin, maybe from before. The auction, the cabin, You planned all of this. Not planned. Hoped. We knew eventually someone would buy that land. Someone who'd find the seller. Someone who'd be stupid enough to try and help. Crane stepped into the chamber, rifle raised. You were perfect, Thornton. A washed-up lawman looking for redemption. Predictable as sunrise. 2 more men entered behind Crane. Silas was outgunned, outmaneuvered, but he wasn't done. You talk too much. He fired. The shot went wide, but it made Crane duck. Silas used the moment to run, not toward the escape passage, toward Crane. He tackled the deputy hard, driving them both to the ground. The rifle flew from Crane's hands. They rolled across the stone floor, fists flying. Crane was stronger than he looked. His elbow caught Silas in the jaw. Stars exploded across his vision. But Silas had been in too many fights to stay down. He drove his knee into Crane's gut, heard the air rush out of him. He grabbed Crane's head and slammed it against the stone floor. Once, twice. Crane went limp. Silas staggered to his feet. The other 2 men had their rifles raised. Don't move! He raised his hands, still had the pistol. 2 rounds left. Drop the gun. He dropped it. One of the men moved forward to grab him. Silas waited until he was close. Then he moved. He grabbed the man's rifle barrel and yanked, pulling him off balance. Used his body as a shield as the other man fired. The bullet hit his own partner in the back. Silas ripped the rifle free and swung it like a club. The stock connected with the second man's skull with a crack that echoed through the chamber. Both men went down. Silas stood in the torchlight, breathing hard. His knuckles were split. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye. But he was alive. He looked down at Crane. The deputy was stirring, groaning. Silas picked up the pistol. 2 rounds left. He pressed the barrel against Crane's forehead. How many men at the river? Crane's eyes focused. Fear flickered in them. Go to hell. Silas cocked the hammer. Wrong answer. 6. 6 men. Crane's voice cracked. Please, don't kill me. Why not? You were going to kill me. Kill Winona. Kill everyone who knew the truth. I was following orders. Whose orders? Crane hesitated. Silas pressed the barrel harder. Whose orders? Blackwood. Judge Blackwood. He's the one who set this all up. The land fraud. The murders. Everything. Crane was babbling now, words tumbling out. He's got men in the territorial government, in Washington. You can't touch him. Nobody can. We'll see about that. Silas pulled the gun back. For a moment, Crane's eyes filled with hope. Then Silas brought the pistol down hard on his temple. Crane slumped unconscious. Silas grabbed a rifle and all the ammunition he could carry. Then he ran for the escape passage. Winona had a head start, but 6 men were waiting at the river. She didn't know she was walking into another trap. He had to reach her first. The passage was narrower than the main entrance. Silas squeezed through, scraping skin off his shoulders. The sound of water grew louder. He could smell the river now. Fresh, cold. The passage ended at a rocky overhang. Below, the river rushed past silver in the moonlight. And on the bank, 6 men stood in a line, rifles ready. Winona was on her knees in front of them. The satchel had been torn from her hands. One of the men held it, flipping through the documents. Well, well. The man stepped forward. Older. Gray hair. A face like carved stone. Judge Blackwood. Miss Winona, we finally meet. He crouched in front of her. Your father was a thorn in my side for years. Thought he could expose me. Thought the truth mattered. He smiled. Cold. Empty. But here's the thing about truth. It only matters if someone's alive to tell it. He raised his pistol. Silas didn't think. He raised the rifle and fired. The shot hit Blackwood's shoulder. The judge screamed and stumbled backward. His men spun, searching for the shooter. Silas fired again. Another man dropped. Winona, run! She was already moving. She grabbed the satchel from the wounded Blackwood and threw herself toward the river. 2 men chased her. Silas shot one in the leg, the other kept running. Winona reached the water's edge. The man was right behind her. She turned, and in her hand was a knife. Where she'd hidden it, Silas didn't know. She buried it in the man's chest. He collapsed at her feet. She stood over him, chest heaving, the knife still in her grip. Silas scrambled down from the overhang. Two more of Blackwood's men were still standing. They had him in their sights. "Drop the rifle." He dropped it. They approached slowly, rifles trained on his heart. Then an arrow took one of them through the throat. Running Elk emerged from the shadows, bloodied but alive. Behind him, 3 more warriors. "Thought you could use some help." The last man tried to run. An arrow caught him between the shoulder blades. Silas grabbed Winona and pulled her close. She was shaking. Or maybe he was. "You're alive," she breathed. "So are you." "I killed him." She looked at the man at her feet. "I've never—" "I know." He held her tighter. "It's over." "No." Blackwood's voice cut through the moment. They turned. The judge had crawled toward the river, leaving a trail of blood. In his hand he held a match, and in his other hand, the satchel. "It's not over. It will never be over." He struck the match. "You think papers matter? You think justice matters? I have men everywhere, in every court, every office. You can't stop what we've built." "Don't," Winona said. "Please." Blackwood smiled. "Your father begged too, right before the end." He dropped the match. The satchel caught fire. Winona screamed and lunged forward. Silas grabbed her, held her back. "No 16 years. Everything my father died for." The flames consumed the papers. Ancient ink turned to ash. Deeds and confessions curled and blackened. Blackwood laughed. Blood bubbled from his lips. "You lose. You all lose." Running Elk raised his bow. "Wait." Silas stepped forward. "He's not dying yet." He crouched in front of Blackwood. The judge's eyes were glazing, but he was still conscious. "You're wrong about one thing." Silas pulled Hartwell's journal from inside his shirt. "We've got a backup." Blackwood's smile died. "No, that's not possible." "Samuel Hartwell documented everything. Names, dates, every bribe you ever paid, every murder you ordered." Silas stood. "The land documents might be gone, but your confession, that's going to hang you." "You can't." "The courts are mine." "Maybe, but the newspapers aren't. Neither is the territorial governor." Silas looked at Running Elk. "Or the federal marshals." Blackwood's face contorted with rage. He tried to rise to grab for the journal. Running Elk's arrow pinned his hand to the ground. Blackwood screamed. "You'll hang for this," Silas said. "Every single one of you. And when you do, the whole world will know what you did." He turned his back on the dying man. Winona stood at the water's edge, staring at the ashes of her father's legacy. Silas approached her slowly. "I'm sorry. I know those papers meant everything." They did. She turned to face him. Tears streaked her cheeks, but something else was in her eyes. "But my father didn't die for papers. He died for the truth, and the truth is still alive." She looked at the journal in Silas's hands. "My father always said the truth has a way of surviving, even when everything else burns." Silas nodded. He understood now. The documents were symbols. Important, but not irreplaceable. The real evidence was the journal. The witnesses, the survivors, the truth. Running Elk approached. "We need to move. More men will come." "Where do we go?" "East, to the territorial capital. There's a marshal there, an honest one." Running Elk's jaw tightened. "If such a thing exists." Silas looked at Winona. She looked at him. "Together," he asked. She took his hand. Together. They left Blackwood bleeding on the riverbank. Left Crane unconscious in the cave. Left the bodies of men who'd chosen the wrong side. The sun was rising as they rode east, pink and gold bleeding into the darkness. Behind them, Thunder Rock stood silent. Ahead of them, the fight was just beginning. The territorial capital of Cheyenne rose from the plains like a promise. 3 days of hard riding had brought them here. 3 days of watching their backs. 3 days of Winona growing stronger with every mile. Silas pulled his horse to a stop at the edge of town. Running Elk and his 3 surviving warriors flanked them. Tommy rode beside Kaya, who'd insisted on coming despite her weakness. "The marshal's office is on Main Street," Running Elk said. "But we can't all ride in together. A group of Apache warriors will cause a panic. Then we split up." Silas looked at Winona. "You and me go to the marshal. Running Elk, take your men and wait outside town. If things go wrong, we'll know what to do." Winona touched Running Elk's arm. "Thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything." Silas and Winona rode into Cheyenne alone. Tommy and Kaya followed at a distance, ready to run if needed. The town was busy. Miners, merchants, cowboys fresh off the trail. Nobody paid attention to a dusty rancher and a tall Apache woman riding side by side. The marshal's office was a squat wooden building with iron bars on the windows. A sign above the door read, U.S. Marshal Thomas Burke. Silas dismounted and helped Winona down. She was steady on her feet now, but he kept his hand on her elbow anyway. "Ready." "I've been ready for 16 years. They pushed through the door. The marshal sat behind a desk covered in papers. He was older than Silas expected. Gray beard, deep lines around his eyes, a star pinned to his chest that looked like it had seen better days. He looked up. His eyes moved from Silas to Winona and back again. "Help you folks." Silas pulled Hartwell's journal from inside his coat and set it on the desk. "My name is Silas Thornton. This is Winona, granddaughter of Chief Iron Feather, and we have evidence of land fraud murder and conspiracy involving Judge William Blackwood and Deputy Marcus Crane of Liberty." Burke stared at the journal, then at them. "That's a hell of an opening statement." "It's a hell of a story." Burke leaned back in his chair. "Blackwood's got friends in Washington. Powerful friends. You understand what you're asking me to do? I'm asking you to do your job." Silence stretched between them. Burke's eyes were unreadable. Then he reached for the journal. "Tell me everything." They talked for 2 hours. Silas told his part. Winona told hers. Tommy came in and added his father's story. Kaya sat in the corner silent, but present her very existence testimony to what had been done. Burke read the journal cover to cover. His face grew darker with each page. When he finished, he set it down and rubbed his eyes. "This is enough to hang a dozen men. Will you act on it?" "I'll do more than act." Burke stood. "I've been trying to nail Blackwood for years. Everyone knew he was dirty, but nobody could prove it. Nobody who lived anyway." He looked at Winona. "Your father was brave. What he did took guts. It took more than guts. It took his life." "I know, and I'm sorry." Burke grabbed his hat. But his sacrifice wasn't for nothing. Not anymore. He walked to the door and called for his deputies. 3 men appeared, hard-faced, serious. "Wire the federal office in Denver. Tell them we're moving on Judge Blackwood and Deputy Crane. Charges are fraud, murder, and conspiracy against the United States government." He paused. "And tell them to send reinforcements. This is going to get ugly." The next 48 hours were a blur. Federal marshals arrived from Denver. Arrest warrants were issued. A posse was assembled. Silas insisted on riding with them. "This isn't your fight anymore," Burke said. "You've done enough." "It became my fight the moment I cut those girls loose from their chains. I'm seeing it through." Burke studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Suit yourself, but stay behind my men. I don't need a civilian getting killed on my watch." They rode for Liberty at dawn. 20 marshals, armed to the teeth. The town was quiet when they arrived. Too quiet. Word had spread. People had locked their doors and shuttered their windows. Burke dismounted in front of the courthouse. Blackwood, Crane, come out with your hands up. Nothing. We have warrants for your arrest. Resist, and we will use force. The courthouse door opened. Deputy Crane walked out. His face was bruised from the beating Silas had given him. His arm was in a sling, but he was smiling. Marshal Burke, what a surprise. Where's Blackwood? The judge is indisposed. Crane spread his hands. But I'm sure we can work something out, man to man. The only thing we're working out is how tight the handcuffs go. Burke signaled his men. 2 marshals moved forward. Crane's smile widened. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Rifles appeared in windows, on rooftops, behind barrels and wagons. At least 30 men, all armed, all pointing their weapons at the marshals. You see, Marshal, this town belongs to me. These people work for me, and they're not going to let you take me anywhere. Burke didn't flinch. These men are federal officers. Fire on them and you're committing treason. Treason? Crane laughed. The only treason here is you riding into my town and trying to arrest a duly appointed officer of the law. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Go home, Burke. Take your boys and ride back to Cheyenne. Tell your bosses you couldn't find any evidence. Tell them whatever you want, but leave. Now. Burke's hand moved to his pistol. Don't. Crane's voice was cold. There are 30 rifles aimed at your head. You might get me, but you won't get out of this town alive. Silas watched from the back of the group. His heart pounded. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, but they weren't alone. He caught movement at the edge of town, Running Elk and his warriors moving through the shadows, taking positions. Silas had to buy time. Crane! The deputy turned. His eyes found Silas. Thornton, I should have killed you when I had the chance. Yeah, you should have. Silas urged his horse forward, pushing through the line of marshals. But you didn't, and now everyone knows what you are. What I am is the law in this town. You're a murderer, a thief, a coward who chains women in cellars and burns men alive for knowing too much. Silas's voice carried across the silent street. Samuel Hartwell, Winona's father. How many others? Careful, Thornton. The whole territory is going to know. The newspapers already have the story. By this time tomorrow, your name will be on every front page from here to Washington. Crane's smile faltered. You're bluffing. Am I? Silas reached into his coat, slowly. Tommy Hartwell rode to Denver yesterday, gave a copy of his father's journal to the Rocky Mountain News. They're printing a special edition as we speak. Crane's face went white. You're lying. Read it yourself tomorrow. Judge Blackwood and Deputy Crane, a legacy of blood and fraud. Silas smiled grimly. Catchy headline, don't you think? Murmurs rippled through the armed townspeople. Some of them lowered their rifles. Others exchanged nervous glances. Don't listen to him, Crane shouted. He's trying to... It's over, Marcus. A new voice. Everyone turned. Judge Blackwood stood in the courthouse doorway. His shoulder was bandaged. His face was gray with pain and something else. Resignation. Your Honor. It's over. Blackwood stepped forward slowly. Each movement seemed to cost him. I've spent 30 years building this empire. 30 years of lies and blood and bodies buried in shallow graves. And now a broken-down rancher and an Apache girl have torn it all down in less than a week. He laughed. It was a hollow, bitter sound. Put down your weapons. All of you. Sir, we can still... We can't. Blackwood's eyes found Silas. You win, Thornton. I don't know how, but you win. The rifles lowered, one by one. Men who'd been ready to die for their masters suddenly found their courage failing. Burke's marshals moved in. Handcuffs clicked around Crane's wrists, around Blackwood's. Silas sat on his horse and watched justice arrive 20 years too late. It wasn't enough. Nothing could bring back the dead. Nothing could undo the suffering. But it was something. The trials lasted 3 months. Blackwood was convicted on 12 counts of fraud, 4 counts of murder, and conspiracy against the United States. He was sentenced to hang. Crane got 25 years in federal prison. Most of his men received lesser sentences. The stolen land was returned to its rightful owners. The Arapaho tribe reclaimed nearly 50,000 acres. Other families got their farms back, their ranches. Tommy inherited his stepfather's name and his legacy. He used the settlement money to open a law office in Cheyenne dedicated to helping those who couldn't help themselves. Kaya recovered fully. She returned to the reservation with her grandfather, Chief Iron Feather, who wept when he saw his granddaughters alive. He thanked Silas in halting English, then embraced him in the Arapaho way, forehead to forehead. Running Elk and his warriors were pardoned for their actions during the rescue. Some returned to the reservation. Others rode west looking for new battles to fight. And Silas went back to the cabin. The barn was gone, burned to ashes, but the cabin still stood, weathered, scarred, stubborn, like him. He stood on the porch, looking out at the land he'd bought for 12 cents. The land that had cost so many lives. The land that had changed everything. "You're thinking too hard." He turned. Winona walked up the path from the road. She'd filled out in the months since the trial. Color in her cheeks, strength in her stride. Just remembering. Dangerous habit. She climbed the porch steps and stood beside him. "Mind if I join you?" "Depends. You planning to stay a while?" She looked at him. In her eyes he saw everything they'd been through. The fear, the pain, the hope that had carried them forward when everything said they should give up. "I was thinking," she said slowly, "that this land could use a woman's touch." "That's so. The cabin's falling apart, the well needs repair, and you can't cook worth a damn. I notice you're insulting my property and my skills in the same breath. I notice you're not saying no." Silas turned to face her fully. He reached out and took her hand. It was warm, strong. "My daughter's coming to visit next month, from Kansas. She's never been to Wyoming." Winona's expression softened. "You wrote to her?" "First letter I've sent in 3 years, told her everything, about the cabin, about what happened." He paused. "About you." "What did she say?" "She said she wants to meet the woman who made her father believe in something again." Winona's eyes glistened. "And what do you believe in now?" "I believe that 12 cents can change a man's life. I believe that courage comes from the strangest places. And I believe—" He pulled her closer. "I believe that some things are worth fighting for." He kissed her. Slow this time. Gentle. A promise instead of a goodbye. When they parted, she was smiling. "So what happens now?" Now, Silas looked out at the land. His land. Their land. "Now we build something. Together." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I'd like that." They stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Behind them the cabin waited. Ahead of them, the future stretched out like an open prairie. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Not a warning this time. A celebration. 1 year later, Silas stood at the gate of his property. The same gate where he'd found the frayed rope. The dried blood. The evidence of horrors he'd never imagined when he'd raised his hand at that auction. The rope was gone now. So was the blood. In its place hung a sign, hand-carved, simple. Thornton Ranch, Est, 1879. Below it in smaller letters, all are welcome. Winona came up beside him, their daughter, his daughter Lily, who'd moved west to live with them holding her hand. "The cattle are settling in," Winona said. "Running Elk's men finished the new fence line this morning." "Good." Silas put his arm around her shoulders. "Tommy's coming for dinner tonight. Says he has news." "Good news." "He's getting married, to a Cheyenne girl he met in Denver." Winona smiled. "His father would be proud." "Yeah, he would." Lily tugged at Winona's hand. "Can I go see the horses?" "Go ahead, but stay where I can see you." The girl ran off, her laughter echoing across the land. Silas watched her go. His throat tightened. "You okay?" Winona asked. Yeah. He pulled her closer. Just thinking about how much has changed. Any regrets? He considered the question, the pain, the loss, the blood on his hands that would never fully wash away, but also the love, the family, the second chance he'd never expected. Not a single one. Winona rose on her toes and kissed his cheek. Good answer. They walked back toward the cabin together, the same cabin that had held so many secrets, so much darkness. Now it held something else, light. As they reached the porch, Winona paused. Silas. Yeah. Thank you. For what? For cutting me down. For not walking away. She turned to face him, her dark eyes shining. For giving me back my life. He cupped her face in his rough hands. You gave me back mine first. The sun set behind them. Golden light spilled across the land, turning everything to fire. In the distance, Lily's laughter mixed with the wind. And Silas Thornton, the man who'd paid 12 cents for a cabin. Nobody wanted, finally understood what wealth really meant. It wasn't money. It wasn't land. It wasn't even justice. It was this. A home. A family. A reason to wake up in the morning. He'd come to Wyoming looking for a fresh start. He'd found something better. He'd found a life worth living. And that, in the end, was worth more than all the gold in the world. The cabin door closed behind them. The wolves fell silent. And somewhere out on the endless prairie, the wind carried a truth that would outlast them all. That ordinary people armed with nothing but courage and conviction can change the course of history. That justice, though it may be delayed, cannot be denied forever. And that love, born in the darkest of places, burns brightest of all. This is the story of the 12-cent cabin. This is the story of Silas and Winona. This is the story of how two broken souls found each other in a world that wanted them dead. And this is how it ends. Not with a whimper, not with a cry, but with a family sitting down to dinner as the stars come out safe in the knowledge that tomorrow will come, and they will face it together. That is the only ending that matters. That is the only ending that ever did.